microscopic debridement for physical therapy and medical care. So this was unblinded, not sham procedure. But again, the physical therapy and medical care group did just as well as the surgery group over the couple of years of the trial. And then, sort of working our way up, this sham fetal nodule tissue implants for Parkinson's disease. So the idea here is to implant fetal tissue that may restore some of the deficits in Parkinson's disease. And the way this trial was done was they randomized people with Parkinson's disease who really were not being controlled with a lot of medication to get 2 burr holes in their skull, and they either got 1 implant on each side, 4 implants on each side, or nothing, just out again. I think in the nothing group they did not go through the meninges. They actually go into the brain and implant the stuff. So they did burr holes, but not through the meningeal tissue. Nevertheless, 2 burr holes in the placebo group, and of course it didn't work. I mean, there was no between differences. So I don't know what's the right answer here, but the argument for doing these placebo-controlled sham surgeries is that surgery is a big deal, costs a lot of money, has really important potential adverse effects, and you should not be doing it if it doesn't work. And the only way to really figure out if it works is to have a really good blinded placebo-type control. And so the unethical nature of not having the placebo control is that you wind up doing the surgery on a whole bunch of people who are not going to benefit from it. Whereas the problem with the trial itself is now you're doing the surgery and not doing anything active. So you're putting people at risk and not even giving them the active intervention. There are a lot of surgeons who just, cannot possibly think about this. But there's been a big change. I must admit, like 10 years ago when I go talk to, say, the neurosurgeons about this kind of stuff, they were just like, no way could we do something sham. It's just completely unethical. But really that balance is doing ineffective surgery in potentially thousands of patients.
Clearly all of these examples are blinding it for the patient. I'm curious, do they, for the sake of hospital care, leave some of the hospital staff blinded and some unblinded? For example, does the resident who's then taking care of that person who underwent sham Parkinson's surgery know what has happened and not happened in the OR?
Very good question. There are 2 things. So usually when you would do this, of course the surgeon knows, right? So the surgeon gets an envelope, the surgeon is unblinded because somebody has to do the surgery. And in a good surgery trial, there'd be multiple surgeons, because you generally don't want just one surgeon, because it could just be that thing works because that surgeon's the best surgeon in the universe. So the surgeon knows. So what you would usually do is after that, take that surgeon sort of out of any outcome ascertainment or outcome measurement role. They might continue in clinical care, but they're not supposed to tell anybody or The other thing is often that surgeon would be taken even out of the clinical care realm, and the people taking care of the patient may not know either. However, you would always have to have some system of 24/7 unblinding if it's necessary. So for example, if something happened and it would make a big difference if the person had gotten the fetal tissue or not, then your study has to be available 24/7 on a pager or something to unblind. But you have rules about unblinding, right? You can say we will unblind if it's going to make a difference in the clinical care of the patient, and you really have to think all this out beforehand. Any questions about this or issues related to your own? And then the other thing is usually what it comes down to more is to do the best you can. And doing the best you can means really thinking clearly about your question and trying to come up with a control that controls in as much a blinded way as possible for anything that doesn't really have to be intervention. So for example, if you're going to do yoga, let's say we're going to do yoga for the treatment of metabolic syndrome, and people are going to go to a 90-minute-a-week yoga class and be told to practice at home. Well, what kind of control would you use for that? You could use nothing. The National Institute for Complementary and Alternative Medicine would not fund your study, but you could use nothing. What else?
Something like general relaxation treatment. they have something?
Yeah, so you could get them together for 90 minutes a week and do some sort of different relaxation treatment, right? That would assume that you think that yoga is something really specific to yoga and that yoga isn't a relaxation intervention. Otherwise, now you've got two effective interventions. It's not, I don't know the answer to this. People have gone round and round. I do know some people doing some yoga trials, and some people have used a more like a walking sort of control, so they do leisure walking for 90 minutes in a group. Because one of the problems with yoga is it's a group and you got a teacher. And just the impact of having a teacher, you get all kinds of co-intervention now, right? Teacher might be saying, eat well, lose weight, exercise. So you want something probably that has a teacher, and you want something probably that gets people together in a group. But after that, it's hard. Somebody is doing one where you do stretching, so they get together for 90 minutes a week and do stretching exercises, because that's thought not to induce a relaxation response. And there was another one where they got together for 90 minutes a week, and somebody from San Francisco State showed them movies. So it was a kind of group activity with a leader where you don't do much talking, because you don't really chat with each other during yoga. But I don't know what's the right thing. It's difficult. These are difficult ones. What about psychotherapy for schizophrenia? So the therapy is, a weekly hour of psychotherapy. What's the control for that? It's really same kind of issues. You do want them to get together with some sort of one-on-one talking thing. But what should it be? Huh? And the other thing, of course, is this makes your trial way more problematic, cumbersome, and expensive, because instead of doing nothing in the control group, if you do something in the control group, now you've doubled the amount of intervention you have to do. And finally, somebody last year was doing this intervention that was computer-based exercises for prevention of, wasn't so much dementia, but cognitive decline. So the intervention was you get on the computer for half hour a day and sort of do brain exercises. And the question was, what should the control group do? And they were giving these people computers. So at a minimum, you probably have to give the control group a computer and probably show them how to use it so they can noodle around on the internet. That is, if you think these specific exercises are what's preventing cognitive decline, rather than just surfing the net. Okay, and then finally use a hard outcome. So, okay, DEF, most people can't use DEF as an outcome. But lab values, x-rays, test results are usually better than self-reported subjective things. And then if it has to be self-reported and subjective, try to use scales and diaries versus just the investigator judgment or the participant judgment.
So oftentimes you end up doing like an equivalency study where you figure that perhaps both of the groups are going to get an effect, and so the difference between the groups is going to be smaller than if you just have the control group do nothing. Is that pretty much, is that one alternative?
We're going to come to that, so
okay.
Let's talk about that and see if you still have a question. And then measure, if it's an unblinded study, you should measure the degree of unblinding. And this is pretty easy to do. All you do is ask the participants at the end of the trial if they knew what they were on. Now, if it's obvious they knew, you don't have to do this. But sometimes if you're worried that your drug has an effect or a smell or whatever, you can just ask participants and your study staff for each participant, what do you think you were on? And they should be right 50% of the time, right? Because if they're just guessing. So if they're right more than 50% of the time, then probably there was some degree of unblinding. And you can then just discuss that in your manuscript, what effect that might have had. All right, I want to move now to talking a little bit about the choice of the intervention. And this is not easy either, because you have to figure out all these things, the type, the intensity, the dose, the frequency, and so on. The principles, though, are clear. We want to maximize benefit and minimize risk, although those are the opposite things, right? So, for example, if you have a new drug, let's say you have a new molecule, and you want to use it to treat incontinence or something, really, to begin with, to prove that it works, you want to give the biggest dose you possibly can to see if it works. So you want to maximize benefit. The problem is, if the thing has some potential side effects,